So if you've looked at the program, you know that we're going to spend the rest of the afternoon talking about the Colorado Water Plan and those who are most integral to the process right now. You all are a part of that process, but your representatives are up here. The first speaker to frame this and provide us with the background and kick off this discussion is James Eklund. James, as you all know, is the new director for the Colorado Water Conservation Board, an excellent choice from an outstanding field of candidates. Congratulations to Mike King and to the governor for James's selection. James is a fifth-generation Coloradan. We'll brag on him as a Western Coloradan. James was actually not our first choice up here, but his father said, listen, if you can get him over on a Friday, I can make him stay the weekend. I'll put him to work up at the ranch up in Colburn. So James, prior to executive director of the Water Conservation Board, was also in the governor's office. I think most of you know that. Prior to that, he was head of the water policy group, or the water group at in the Attorney General's office, with a lot of experience and with our great appreciation. James Eklund, director of CWCB, to kick off the water plan discussion.
All right, thank you. So I kind of feel like the runner from Marathon that ran into Athens, and instead of announcing a Greek victory, unfortunately I have a report from the eastern side of the Continental Divide. They're experiencing a 500-year plus watershed rainfall. Some areas have received over 9 inches of rain in the last 24 hours and 14.5 inches in the last 36 hours. Some areas have received really what will amount to a 1,000-year event. The South Platte and Weld County will peak starting today in the Greeley area, and the flood wave will continue downstream over the weekend. There are numerous road closures, including I-25 all the way from Highway 7 just north of Denver up to Wyoming. There are 3 known fatalities in this flood system along the Front Range, but unfortunately many people are stranded, and there are at least 20 people listed as missing right now. Multiple counties have been heavily affected, as you probably know or have heard: Boulder, Larimer, Adams, Arapahoe, Denver, Weld, Jefferson, El Paso, Broomfield are just the short list of those who've been affected most substantially. Many wastewater treatment plants, as the water community I'm sure is interested in hearing, and it probably comes as no surprise with the level of flows that we're experiencing there. They're at maximum flows, but they're currently handling their flows. Some have been flooded, however, and are compromised, meaning raw sewage in some of the watershed. There are new reports of, at least when I got this, and this changes every 5 minutes, so this is probably dated information, but there's new reports of a train derailment and a major natural gas pipeline rupture near Milliken. So it's a serious situation. The flow rates being forecasted for the Poudre are of immense concern. A serious situation in the Poudre, 10,000 CFS is what that river is running at the mouth of the canyon. 7,000 CFS is estimated in the Poudre at Fort Collins, and then you go down a little bit to 5,000 to 7,000 CFS in Windsor this afternoon. But as you can imagine, that wave of water is going to continue downstream all the way to, I saw Joe Frank here, all the way down to Sterling and the lower part of the river over the next couple of days. Unknown number of homes damaged or destroyed in this, and thousands of people have been evacuated and are in shelters as we speak. So there are heavy infrastructure damages, including 1 or more dam breaches and several overtopping events. So that all proceeded or informed the governor to go ahead and ask for a presidential declaration that was announced, that was granted last night, that allows individual assistance and public assistance, which is usually something that's very hard to reach the threshold to get. We at the CWCB have a statutory responsibility, really, for the flood response and mitigation, and will be heavily involved as we go forward. So DK had a potential video. We're going to try and make this work. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but I think it's important that everybody in the water community kind of know what's going on, and with the aid of YouTube, we can kind of see it in real time. So if you can give that a shot. So that's the Big Thompson River, and you can see somebody there trying to open a release some more water through that structure so they don't lose the structure. Incredibly unsafe, dangerous water moving at that rate with that volume and with that amount of debris. It's really, like the governor said this morning, it's like moving concrete. And it can knock you off your feet with just a foot or two of it. You'll see one more set of video image here. I think if we advance it a little. So you just saw a diversion structure. You're going to see a highway that runs through the canyon there, and where that highway has really been eaten away by the river. It illustrates a point that I think is important to everyone in the water community, and that is our infrastructure already definitely underfunded and not where we want it to be. It faces the threat of something like this. They had to do some rescuing of people. River District has developed a saying or a slogan, and I think it's something like it's all connected. And all the water in the state of Colorado is connected, and that's true. We're physically connected by our hydrology and our trans-mountain diversions, but we're connected in a deeper sense, as we're all Coloradans. And we're, after tragedy, after crisis like this, after the shootings in Aurora, we pulled together. After wildfires have happened around the state, we've pulled together. And when I went down to the West Fork fire down in the Rio Grande Basin, not connected to really the rest of the state physically, it was impressive to me that the water manager of that reservoir had already received several calls from people at Colorado Springs Utilities, from people at up in Fort Collins and at Northern Water, who were explaining and conveying best management practices, because when you have a burn scar in your watershed that supplies your water, it's a daunting task, and it just exemplified to me how we all pull together when necessary. And we'll pull together to face this. Which leads me to the topic of the panel, and that's the Colorado Water Plan. Thanks for the introduction, Chris. This is a great opportunity, and I wanted to come over, because our agency really can't do the work it wants to do and needs to do until after the water starts to subside a little bit. So I didn't want to miss this seminar, and it's important to Colorado that we start having this conversation as much and as in-depth as possible. So my job over the next 20 minutes is to show you why this is the first Colorado water plan by Coloradans for Colorado. If you would have told my great-great-grandparents who homesteaded here in Mesa County, as Chris said, that we were working on a Colorado water plan, this would have been their reaction. Not impressed. And frankly, 10 to 15 years ago, I'd have been skeptical too. And why? We're skeptical because we fear an erosion of the doctrine of prior appropriation that we all consider as our certainty in water. We fear the state control of a private property right, and what do we fear more than state control of, the state telling us what to do with our water? If the federal government tells us what to do with our water. You're looking at a report from 1974 titled the Colorado State Water Plan. This was an appraisal level review of water use in Colorado to determine the feasibility of building more federal projects. And they did it all over the West in states like Colorado. And nothing really happened with this effort because it was conducted by the federal government for the purpose of utilizing federal dollars. But it did make the following observation. In some cities along the South Platte River, especially near the Front Range, the municipal and industrial water supply is becoming critical, and in the absence of other alternatives, agricultural rights have been purchased. There is a danger that the basic agricultural economy will be destroyed. So you flash forward 36 years from that report, and you read what the IBCC, the Interbasin Compact Committee, wrote to the governor in 2010. IBCC agrees that the status quo solution for meeting our water needs is the buy and drive irrigated ag, and that is not a status quo that is acceptable. Our water landscape has shifted in Colorado from one where unappropriated water was abundant to one where a water supply gap looms on our doorstep. If we want a different future for Colorado, it won't happen by accident. We need to provide viable alternatives to permanent ag buy and dry. But there are other reasons why we need Colorado's water plan, and this is the right time for that. It's because usually we fear, in planning, you fear the unknown, but in water, we fear the known. We know, there it is, that our gaps are real. Our gap in each basin, these are real numbers, and we know that as you total them all up, and our gap can be 500,000 acre feet by 2030. That's not an acceptable amount. We have to do something. Our 2011 statewide water supply initiative puts us in a position to know more about this gap and where it will occur than ever before. Our state demographer projects us growing by 2 million people to 7 million total Coloradans in 2030. We know that drought has become the persistent, it's become the new normal. Independent of what we just saw in these flood events, we have to plan for that persistence. Just like John Insminger from Nevada said, we have to make sure that we're planning for what is possible, not necessarily what is probable. These are maps that you are all probably too sick, I know I am, of seeing. I know John Stolp's too sick of seeing these maps, but they illustrate the point that this slide I think makes better. And that is the yellow line is where our average hydrology is in the upper Colorado River Basin. The last 4 years of 5 have been below that line, and those are the lines we have to plan for. We can't plan for the lime green line in 2011 and hope that the hydrology just magically gets better. We know that as a headwater state, we do not operate in a vacuum, and that it is critical to our interstate positions and responsibility that our intrastate house is in order. We know that the quality and quantity sides of this equation are converging. An example of that is dealing with nutrients requires an understanding of water supply and water volume and vice versa. We're seeing that in spades in this flooding incident. The news isn't all bad, though. We also know that we stand on 8 years of civic engagement and work by the Basin Roundtables, the IBCC, the Interbasin Compact Committee, and the CWCB itself. We know that we have legislators, Representative Quorum's here, and there are probably other people I'm missing in the audience that are ready and willing to assist legislatively as we confront our water challenges in this plan. So now that we've seen why the time is right for a plan, what will it do? It'll establish our water values. I think this is of primary importance, and align our water efforts to achieving those values. With viable, those values are really fourfold. The first being viable and productive agriculture, healthy watersheds in the environment, vibrant and sustainable cities, and robust recreation. These are the values that you all know, and you know they make Colorado, Colorado. So we're going to harness the last 8 years of largely civil discussion in the Basin Roundtables and the IBCC to align our efforts to sustain those values. The Basin Roundtables are preparing work on their basin implementation plans. They have taken stock of what is going on in their own house, as Rush George asked them to do at the start of that process, and they've opened up a dialogue between and among one another. And that's really encouraging. They might even be able to reach across the divide to find points of consensus, which is really the holy grail of this effort. The plan can also address the gap. And to address the gap, it'll have to protect existing yield of M&I. It'll have to encourage suitable new water projects to address the gap. Demand-side conservation of the type of really cutting-edge work that you heard about going on in Sterling Ranch. And innovation has to be occurring in Colorado, and we can do that. We can lead as a headwater state. And also, it has to, have a pretty robust set of mitigation and enhancement of environmental impacts. So, the plan can also provide a regulatory incentive structure for projects that meet certain factors. And this may be hard for you to read on this slide, I apologize for that, but you start down here with a project meeting certain factors. And these are the things that you heard about in some of the presentations today. You heard about going on in places in Nevada and also in Sterling Ranch. If you can meet certain factors with the project, if you're doing the right thing by mitigation to the environment wherever you're taking the water from, for example, if you can meet a solid threshold of factors that we all can identify in this conversation that are set forth in the plan so they're no surprise to anybody, then you go to the next step, which is the state can then go ahead and there it is. You can go ahead and have a prioritization of our resources. Really, in the permitting process, there are two places where we have resources to bear on a permitting of a project, and that's Clean Water Act permitting and wildlife mitigation. We need to be utilizing our resources at the state, because we don't permit the project, the federal government does, in a way that influences this process and influences water providers to do the list of things that we're talking about, and that get us to the values that we all agree on. That would, again, pave the way for a state endorsement of a project and quicker regulatory process. And I use quicker there on purpose and for a reason. And that is, my dad, who's here, is a basketball coach, and when he was coaching basketball, there were a lot of John Wooden quotes thrown around the house, and the one that stuck in my mind is, be quick but don't hurry. And that's what this is. And what Coach Wooden meant by that was, when you hurry, you make errors and you have to redo work. But when you're quick, you're more efficient, you're more effective. And that's what we need to do here. This isn't saying that we're going to run a regulatory process that isn't robust, and we need to make sure that we're doing the right things. It's not to hurry through a process. It's to be quick and efficient and effective and elegant doing it. So some of these factors that I've put up in front of the CWCB board to start this discussion are, does it address the gap? Is it sustainable? Does it have an ag impact? And has that been identified and addressed? Does it have a conservation plan? Is there project density talked about in a meaningful way? Is there environmental mitigation and enhancement that's robust? Sufficient quality address? Is it addressed sufficiently in the project? Do they have a stakeholder and public input process? And then, is the project fiscally viable? And then, importantly, is the local government consulted, and how are they consulted? So this plan can build on existing efforts to protect, preserve, and restore our watersheds and rivers. We've seen that with the fires when we've been doing this work, and the recovery programs, the wild and scenic alternatives that you all live through over on the western slope every year, and even things like Denver Water's USGS agreement on watershed health. Another thing we can do is align our resources as a state. We spend a lot of water dollars in the state, and we need to make sure that we've aligned those projects so that they're not competing at cross purposes. We also have a lot of water products that are out there in the form of studies and the work that we do on a daily basis at the CWCB and CDPHE. We need to make sure that we're aligning those products and services. So when I think about water planning, I think about an axis. On the one end, you've got the glossy report of water plans that doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. On the other end, you have meaningful action. Another axis is this property owner control on one end. That's us. That's Colorado. Or centralized control on the other end of that spectrum. That's California. California does all their own water projects, and you don't have individual water rights in California. They're all owned by special districts of the state. We need to sit in that quadrant right up there with this effort. Now, here's the challenge. This is the timeline that we have to get this done. We had an executive order from the governor to the CWCB to start work on this project in May. The plan has a framework in place that is evolving and hopefully will be talked about in Telluride in September with the board. And we'll move forward through the Basin Implementation Plan process. And finally, we get to that last bullet there. That's kind of D-Day for us, December 10th, 2014, which is 455 days from today. And as I tell my staff, we're 54 days tomorrow. This, you can't read it, so I'm not going to go over it, but it's our process for getting through to implementing this plan. We have this framework. In order to produce the most useful tool possible for Colorado water, a myriad of issues, as you can imagine, must be examined and considered through the entirety of the process. So the CWCB is going to be examining this, like I said, in Telluride in its next meeting at the end of the month. So, in conclusion, we know that this plan isn't a silver bullet. But we're reminded of the words of that great water philosopher, Mike Tyson, who said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And in Colorado, we're no stranger to that. Drought has punched us in the face. Reduced hydrology has punched us in the face. Dust on snow, as you see a presentation out in the hallway, has punched us in the face. The state of Nevada has... The state of Arizona has punched us in the face. Wildfire has punched us in the face, and now floods are indeed punching us in the face. But Coloradans don't stay down. We get up, we regroup, and then we counterpunch. So follow this fight. Go to your basin roundtables. We need you. We need you to go to the website, follow us on Twitter, friend us on Facebook. As a person from rural Colorado who now lives in Denver, I have a secret to share, and that is there's no monopoly on good ideas at the state capitol. So with that, I look forward to the panel discussion and hearing your thoughts on things.